Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Be Well Texas Recovery Support Services Echo. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Shreya Prasanna, and I will be the facilitator for today's session. Before we get started, please note that we are recording these sessions for later distribution. Please note that anything listed in the chat does not appear in the recording. To help us with attendance, please enter your name, affiliation, and email into the chat function. To access the chat feature, click on the speech bubble icon on the navigation bar at the bottom of your window. To all the Be Well Texas providers, please make sure that you identify yourselves during the session, or if you're joining via phone, please email your phone number and name to bewelltx@udisca.edu. We appreciate your support in helping us fully capture this record. These sessions are enabled for live closed captioning. If you would like to view closed captioning, please navigate to the bottom of your Zoom window and select the Show Captions option. You may need to click on the three dots More menu at the bottom right of your Zoom screen to find this. If you have having trouble accessing captions, please message Echo IT. We love to see everyone's beautiful faces, so if you're comfortable and able, we encourage you all to join by video, especially for the discussion portion of our session. We encourage everyone to speak, but ask that you stay muted unless you're speaking. To mute and unmute, select the microphone icon on the bottom left of your screen. If you've joined on a computer or if you're joining by phone, please press *6. You can also use the chat feature to raise questions and comments. We want to hear from as many of you as possible, so please keep your comments brief to allow time for others to speak up. Please note that no protected health information is allowed in either the chat or the discussions. During and after the session, our Echo IT support kiddo will send out a link to an evaluation of the session. All participants filling out the survey will be automatically entered into a raffle for a $30 Walmart gift card. Our didactic today is on Introduction to ASIST, Saving Lives in Texas. Following that, we will be discussing a case from ETCADA. We will start with introductions followed by didactics, announcements, case presentation, and an open discussion. Thank you all again for joining today. Remember, these sessions are what we make of them. We encourage you all to share your perspectives in today's conversation. With that, we'll do some introductions. Sean.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sean Wright, Program Director for RSS at Abilene Recovery Council and subject matter expert for the Hub team.
Thank you so much for joining us. Joseph.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joseph Sanchez. I am the Director of Programs with Faces and Voices of Recovery and also a subject matter expert with the Hub.
Thank you so much for joining us. Richard.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Richard Hamner with Recovery Program Manager with Recovery Support Services and Hub, a member for this Echo. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And Adrian.
Hi, everyone. Adrian Lindsay, Director for the Center for Substance Use Training and Telementoring here at Be Well, Texas. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. With that, we'll now move on to our didactics. Dr. Kintigh is here, and while Kato pulls up your slides, if you could please introduce yourself to our community here.
Well, yeah, I'm Monica Kintigh, and I have a PhD. You can call me Dr. Kintigh, but I think it just means mostly that I'm curious, I love going to school, and I love the work that I do. I work for myself, which is great right now. I don't make a lot of money being a licensed professional counselor because I do any kind of crisis work over the phone for free, and most people want free. But I also know all of the different services in my county, so I can support that a lot. My work around suicide now is both voluntary in my community and also around what I do for training for an international company called Living Works. And so when I was asked to be a part of this, the question came up about the ASIST workshop that I do offer in my community, but I also train trainers to do the workshop. And so what I do a lot of is supporting trainers, supporting people who want to use different kinds of suicide intervention training. I volunteer in Tarrant County. I am a part of the Suicide Awareness Coalition. So that's, primary prevention, educational prevention. We also have a loss team, local outreach to survivors of suicide, which is for people who are bereaved by suicide. They've lost a family member, a very close friend, and we reach out to those lost members. Our loss team reaches out to people either at the scene of a suicide, so the police can do their work, and we work with the family who are left, and we do follow up after the week. We give them resources and things to help them make sense of it all, have a place for open and direct talk, which I think is another kind of prevention, because after the fact, it's important to have those opportunities to openly and directly talk about suicide. So then intervention is what I'm going to talk about today. That is what we do when we find out someone has thoughts of suicide. What do? Many of us have had some kind of training about recognizing signs. I usually call them invitations, things that make us think, maybe I need to explore what's going on with this person. Maybe I need to ask about suicide. And so what I'm going to be talking about today is about intervention, not just recognizing signs, not just, but this workshop that helps you figure out what to do after someone says yes. When you ask them that direct question, are you having thoughts of suicide? Are you having thoughts about ending your life? Or, what to do next? And I never got that training in graduate school. I got the training on the job, and sometimes it was good and sometimes it wasn't. And so I'll be talking more about that. So this is the beginning slide here. If you go to the next slide, it just highlights what I'm going to be talking about in terms of what ASIST is and why ASIST is important, or some kind of suicide first aid training. The first point has to do with the fact that suicide is really a community health issue. It's not just a mental health issue, because even though a high percentage of people who actually end their life by suicide, there are also people who end their life by suicide who might not have a mental health diagnosis. Sometimes it can happen very fast and as an acute stress situation. And I guess that's technically a DSM-5 diagnosis, acute stress disorder. But we think about depression, for example. Not all people who suicide are depressed. And not all depressed people even think about suicide. So we're not just dealing with mental health issues of anxiety, suicide, bipolar, whatever kind of diagnosis we're thinking about. What I'm going to talk more about is this role of suicide first aid intervention and how that plays an important role in building suicide safer communities, because we really can't keep people from having those thoughts. We can't be the thought police. What we can do is help people take those thoughts and their suicide story, why they think suicide might be an option for them. We can help them to find ways not to act on those thoughts. And what we do is we look for some little bit of uncertainty, some little bit of life, some little bit of doubt, and build and support on that. And then I'm going to identify some of the ways that the ASIST workshop in particular meets the needs of all types of helpers, both professional and non-professional. So if we go to the next slide, ASIST is a 2-day workshop. It's extremely interactive with lots of facilitation rather than lecture, and lots of practice and interact. So only about 10 to 15% of the workshop is presentation, like what I'm giving you right now. 80 to 90% of, well, no, that's not right. My numbers are wrong. 80 to 85% of it are really, it's interactive. You don't just sit there. You have to participate to get the most out of it. Although nobody's required to participate, it's strongly encouraged. So we do a lot of balancing safety and making it safe enough for people to participate, interact, practice the skills we teach, as well as safe enough so that they can meet that challenge of even talking openly about suicide. We train people that are mental health professionals, but we also train other people outside of the mental health profession, because the likelihood that someone is going to want to talk to the person that's closest to them or their friend is probably one of the most important things that we need to pay attention to. We only train people that are 16 or older. So the next thing, just in terms of focusing on it as the next slide talks about how suicide is a community health problem that affects all of us. So what you have pictured here, it's not the best picture, but it is an iceberg. And what we know about icebergs is that we only really see the tip. So, for example, in 2020, the tip of the iceberg that there were about 45,000 plus suicides in the US. And that is about a rate of 13.5 per 100,000. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. What we know is underneath the water, where more information lies, is that unreported suicides are 5 to 25% more. And these are unreported likely because maybe it's a one-car accident. Maybe it's an overdose that we don't know if it was accidental or intentional. If the medical examiner can't determine whether it's a suicide, they won't list it as a death by suicide. We know that non-fatal suicide behaviors, depending on which research you look at, are 40 to 100 times greater. So our number is getting quite big now as we think about people who have suicide behaviors, taking those thoughts to action. I'm not talking about people who self-harm to cope with stress. I'm talking about people who are actually taking those thoughts to action because they feel so desperate they have to act on those thoughts. They have to take those thoughts to action. So sometimes, of course, self-harm behaviors, cutting and burning and different kinds of things, sometimes those things start out as a coping technique and end up actually as a suicide behavior. And sometimes the behaviors are rehearsal until I finally do it. And sometimes they're not connected to suicide at all. So we do have to pay attention to that. People with thoughts of suicide are about 3 to 5% of the population. So that's about 1 in 20 people. About 1 in 20 people. So when you have thoughts of suicide in a given year, so think about the people that you're around on a regular basis. 1 in 20 of them likely have had those thoughts. Now, sometimes people let go of those thoughts as soon as they come into their head. Sometimes people, but we need to have lots of folks around that can intervene and offer suicide first aid. You're actually more likely to need to do suicide first aid than you are to have to do CPR because someone's had a heart attack. We also know that people are affected by when someone they know dies by suicide, whether it's just someone they've heard about, like on the news, or maybe a famous person like Robin Williams, whether it's someone they actually know, an acquaintance, close friend or family member. But people are affected by someone who dies by suicide. It touches them. And it also, even if they just have suicide behaviors, everybody who's around that person also needs something. They need to be able to talk about it. They need to be able to know what to do, to feel more helpful, to feel more like they can be more a part of it. So if we look at the next slide, there are many ways that communities are affected. The bereavement and pain of loved ones. There's a lot of expense when someone suicides or someone has behaviors, suicide behaviors. There's medical expenses. There's lost wages. We have loss of morale in organizations where there's been a suicide. And sometimes our fear of talking about it, that it's going to increases stigma and taboo. So one of the things we need to do is reduce that with open and direct talk. I think open and direct talk and saying the word suicide and getting comfortable with it can be one of the best tools we can use. And ASIST offers that space and that time for us to unpack our feelings, our attitudes about suicide. As a mental health professional, I was taught to take my, my feelings, my emotions, my experiences, set them aside to be fully present for the person that I'm trying to help. However, we need to be able to unpack those and look at them and see how those feelings, experiences, and attitudes influence what we do. We need to be able to talk openly about suicide, and the ASIST workshop takes some time for everyone in the workshop to bring out those things, to talk about it openly, and to look at the impact, maybe how your attitudes, beliefs, experiences might impact offering suicide first aid in a positive way, in a helpful way, or how sometimes our attitudes, beliefs, and experiences might impact someone in a not so helpful way. And so if we notice that, what do we want to do differently? Maybe sometimes our attitudes suggest high guidance, lots of leadership with people, and other times our attitudes, beliefs, experiences suggest lower guidance. So there's a big discussion about that. So what can we do to help? We can try to prevent suicide. Suicide can be preventable, and anyone can make a difference in helping someone get to a place of safety for now. So ASIST really, it's not about therapy. It's not about solving all the problems that people bring to, although we let people, in the intervention, we let them talk about what's brought them to this idea that suicide is an option, or for them seems like a good option. That's what they're thinking. We don't try to solve those problems. We don't try to fix it. We don't try to, in one interaction, find the magic key. We really work in ASIST to help people recognize that maybe there is something, maybe there's a little bit of doubt. Maybe there's a little bit of uncertainty. Maybe there's just something they say, like, if we say to them, seems like everything's headed towards suicide for you and what you're telling me right now, and trying to understand that. And they say, yes, but when someone says yes, but, that's where all the life is. They don't even have to finish the sentence. It's about helping people recognize that when you said but, it made me think maybe there's a part of you that hasn't fully decided suicide is the answer. Since you haven't fully decided, would you be willing to work on some safety for now? Because maybe this feeling will pass. Getting them to agree to it. Because a lot of things that are out there skip over listening to their story, skip over helping them decide that, yeah, maybe I do have a little part of me that is not totally focused on death. Maybe there's something that I can do to be safe for now until I get past this desperate moment. And that's what ASIST teaches people. So people that are available to use it, it's like I say, it's a community-wide, let's look at the next slide, a community-wide experience, because on the next slide, you can see who uses ASIST skills. It could be community members, it can be counselors, social workers, clinicians, crisis line workers. All of the people on the National Suicide Lifeline 988 have been trained in ASIST. Doctors, nurses, medical faith communities. And I'll talk a minute about other programs we have that work specifically with faith communities, firefighters, our first responders, military. I do this a lot of military installations, but almost anybody who's going to be in close proximity, because most people don't share their thoughts of suicide for the first time in a mental health professional's office, or even a peer, they might with a peer specialist, because that's peer-to-peer interaction. But it's somebody who's close to them though. It's family, friends, a caring person. And that's the person who needs to be prepared to do the first aid. Just like we prepare everybody to do CPR, makes sense that we'd want as many people as possible to know how to do first aid. So if we look at the next slide, this looks at LivingWorks is an international company, and ASIST is just one of their programs. It's kind of was the gold standard main program, but then we began to realize that not everybody in a community needs to be a suicide first aid caregiver. Sometimes we just need people that are willing to talk openly about it. Sometimes we need people that are safety starters. Sometimes we need safety connectors that get someone to someone who can do first aid. And then we need people who can do post-intervention after you've done that's safe for now. So if we look at the next slide, oh no, yeah, I'm going to skip what I was going to say about, go back to the last slide. And if you go to livingworks.net, you can go through, there is a program on there that looks at building a continuum of support like you're seeing here. And it looks at what kinds of folks we need in our community to play different roles. So LivingWorks has several other programs, like I say, LivingWorks Start, Safe Talk, which are shorter than 2-day programs. The ASIST workshop is a 2-day workshop. And that's because there's lots of practice built in, so that when you leave, you have practiced being a caregiver in a variety of ways, large groups, small groups, running simulations, all sorts of ways, so that when you leave, you feel much more comfortable actually doing it. And so I would encourage you to go to livingworks.net to look at these other programs, but also look at and think about, what do you need? What role do you want to play in a community? And as a person who does counseling and therapy, if someone talks about suicide in my session, I take off my counseling and therapy hat, because those are often longer term goals I'm working with someone on. I put on my first aid hat, and I'm looking at just safety for now. That longer term stuff isn't going to be handled in one session, but I can help someone to be safe for now so that we have the time and space to work on the longer stuff. So now if we go to the next slide, I thought you might want to know about some of the outcomes. So the ASIST outcomes, people learn to understand better their own attitudes and beliefs and the impact that might have on your role as a caregiver or a helper. To recognize someone with thoughts of suicide, step up and actually talk to them and try to understand their situation. I try never to say, oh, I absolutely understand, because usually the next thing out of my mouth is going to be, and here's why, because of my experiences, and then it becomes all about me. But I do usually say, help me understand what you mean by this. Help me understand why suicide, why now? We also, the outcome is that we learn how to help a person with suicide thoughts find that turning point, that emotionally charged moment when life seems to speak, when something about them changes, and we help them stay safe for now. We also know that suicide first aid, much like being a lifeguard and offering CPR, it's not something you do alone, or when you end, other people are involved. So I happen to be a widow, but the one morning when my husband, fell over and was making weird sounds, and I had to do chest compressions. I didn't do chest compressions until he revived, and that was done. We did nothing else. I ran first, opened the front door so the paramedics could get there. I had the 911 operator on. I did the chest compressions until they came, and they could then, we got other people involved. It was that immediate risk of death and safety for now is what I was able to do. It's the same with suicide first aid, and we get other people involved. But if we take the time to really listen to people and be there with them and get them to agree that they want to be safe for now, our care and support and respect for where they are right now and their story makes all the difference in creating for them a willingness to think about life, a willingness to think about the future, and a willingness to think about being supported by other people. So,
Monica,
yes.
we're almost getting close to time. So if you could please summarize in the next couple of minutes.
Okay, so I just want to
Thank
say
you.
that the last outcomes are, it improves your caregiver skills. Let's just look at the last few slides. It will help people at risk. And I got some sources here if you want to look those up later. And these are all studies that found it also is a cost-effective way to help. So if there are any other questions I can answer about this, I could probably talk about it for 3 days. And right now I'm at a training for trainer in Baton Rouge. So I'm training people to do the workshop. So I'm sticking this in the middle of my training day. So I've been talking a lot. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Monica. That was a great presentation, and I wish we had more time, but we are close to time, so we will end the session. Thank you all again for joining today's session. As a reminder, to earn continuing education credits, please complete a post-session survey using the link in the chat. Our next session is on Wednesday, February 22nd. If you have any questions for Monica, please do put them in the chat. We will definitely pass it on to her and we can get you some answers as well.
And yeah, and my email address is monica.kintigh@livingworks.net. And feel free to send me some questions. I will be training the rest of this week, but I'll get back to you early next week.
That would be amazing. If you could just drop your email on the chat, Monica, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you all again for joining today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.